Hello to all my students. I miss you very much, and I am going to post a little recording of a couple of the passages that you're going to be reading in case you want to follow along. I actually do not have the CDs for these two short plays. I'm going to read them. And again, they come from your textbook. So here's your textbook. I want to give um, credit to this book that I'm using. And if you would open your books, we're starting on page, and this is actually the second item that you're supposed to be reading. These are the plays that you're going to be looking at, and so it's page 216 and 217. And this section right here, I'll just read this, so follow with me. Plays, comedy and tragedy, humor and drama. Every play brings the human experience to life through the dialogue and action of its cast. The audience feels what the characters feel. The reader does too. As you read these scripts, let the setting and stage directions guide you through two worlds. One play is realistic and serious, the other a funny fantasy. Each is about the experience of being human. So the first play that we're going to look at is The Diary of Anne Frank, and it is by Frances Goodrich and Albert Hackett. So it is taken from her diary and put into just a short play version of the story. So if you turn over to page 218, you'll see that this genre is plays or drama. And then it says The Diary of Anne Frank is a historical drama based on a real diary. It has a serious subject and a conventional structure. And then notice how this section right here is in italics. So this is kind of like an introduction for you of what's going on, the setting and the time frame and so forth. During World War II, 1939 to 1945, Jews throughout Europe fled their homes to escape the Nazi invasion. Many Jews were sent to concentration camps, while thousands went into hiding. In 1942, 7 Jews entered the attic above an old warehouse in Amsterdam. Mr. and Mrs. Frank, their daughters Margot and Anne, Mr. and Mrs. Van Daan, and their son Peter, Miep Geist and her boss, Mr. Krayler, worked in the office below and brought their families food and news every day. So I think that in some ways, not in every way, we can relate to being in quarantine right now relate to Anne Frank because she had to be in quarantine or more like hiding for her life. So I guess it's kind of not quite the same thing, but in some ways you have to stay away from your family and the life that you knew and your school and those kinds of things. So you can make somewhat of a connection. So the title is The Diary of Anne Frank by Frances Goodrich and Albert Hackett. The characters: Anne Frank is age 13. Peter Van Daan is age 16. Mr. Frank is Anne's father. And the time is 1942. The setting is an attic above an old warehouse in Amsterdam. As the scene opens, Mr. Frank has just finished explaining the rules of the house, and the two families are getting acquainted. So it starts out with a picture, which tells me that there's most likely a movie version of this. I have not seen this movie version, but I recognize the actress there, so I think that you could probably find it if you did some searching. Okay, so the thing about reading a play is it's much better to watch a play than read it because each character has a part and their personality develops. And so if one person, especially if your teacher just reads the whole play to you, it's not nearly as exciting. But I am going to go ahead and read through it so that you can hear it and follow with me because it's the best I can do right now. So this is Anne. What's your cat's name? Peter. Mushy. Anne. Mushy, Mushy, Mushy. She picks up the cat, walking away with it to Peter. I love cats. I have one, a darling little cat, but they made me leave her behind. I left some food and a note for the neighbors to take care of her. I'm going to miss her terribly. What is yours, a him or a her? He's a Tom. He doesn't like strangers. He takes the cat from her, putting it back in its carrier. Anne, unabashed. Then I'll have to stop being a stranger, won't I? Is he fixed? Peter, startled. Huh. Did you have him fixed? Peter, no. Anne. Oh, you ought to have him fixed to keep him from, fighting. Where did you go to school? Peter. Jewish secondary. Anne. But that's where Margot and I go. I never saw you around. Peter. I used to see you. Sometimes. Anne. You did? Peter. In the schoolyard. You were always in the middle of a bunch of kids. He takes a penknife from his pocket. Anne. Why didn't you ever come over? Peter. I'm sort of a lone wolf. He starts to rip off his Star of David. Anne. What are you doing? Peter. Taking it off. Anne. But you can't do that. They'll arrest you if you go out without your star. He tosses his knife back on the table. Peter. Who's going out? Anne. Why, of course. You're right. Of course we don't need them anymore. She picks up his knife and starts to take her star off. I wonder what our friends will think when we don't show up today. Peter. I don't have any dates with anyone. And, oh, I did. I had a date with Jopie to go and play ping pong at her house. Do you know Jopie DeWall? Peter. No. And Jopie's my best friend. I wonder what she'll think when she telephones and there's no answer. Probably she'll go over to the house. I wonder what she'll think. We left everything as if we'd suddenly been called away. Breakfast dishes in the sink, beds not made. As she pulls off her star, the cloth underneath shows clearly the color and form of the star. Look, it's still there. Peter goes over to the stove with his star. What are you going to do with yours? Peter. Burn it. She starts to throw hers in and cannot. It's funny. I can't throw mine away. I don't know why. Peter. You can't throw something they branded you with, that they made you wear so they could spit on you? And I know, but after all, it's the Star of David, isn't it? In the bedroom, right, Margot and Mrs. Frank are lying down. Mr. Frank starts quietly out. Peter. Maybe it's different for a girl. Mr. Frank comes into the main room. Mr. Frank. Forgive me, Peter. Now, let me see. We must find a bed for your cat. He goes to a cupboard. I'm glad you brought your cat. Anne was feeling so badly about hers. Getting a used small wash tub. Here we are. Will it be comfortable in that? Peter, gathering up his things. Thanks. Mr. Frank, opening the door of the room on the left. Now notice I've read the stage directions. These little italicized in parentheses sections are stage directions. So normally if you're watching a play, those things wouldn't be read, but I'm reading them to you since we're not together and you're not watching the play being acted out. And here's your room, but I warn you, Peter, you can't grow anymore, not an inch, or you'll have to sleep with your feet out of the skylight. Are you hungry? Peter, no. Mr. Frank, we have some bread and butter. Peter, no thank you. Mr. Frank, you can have it for luncheon then. And tonight we will have a real supper, for our first supper together. Peter, thanks. He goes into his room. During the following scene, he arranges his possessions in his new room. Mr. Frank. That's a nice boy, Peter. And he's awfully shy, isn't he? Mr. Frank, you'll like him, I know. And I certainly hope so, since he's the only boy I'm likely to see for months and months. Mr. Frank sits down, taking off his shoes. Mr. Frank. Anarchy. There's a box there. Will you open it? He indicates a carton on the couch. Anne brings it to the center table. In the street below, there is the sound of children playing. As she opens the carton, you know the way I'm going to think of it here? I'm going to think of it as a boarding house, a very peculiar summer boarding house, like the one that she breaks off as she pulls out some photographs. Father, my movie stars, I was wondering where they were. I was looking for them this morning. And Queen Wilhelmina, how wonderful. Mr. Frank, there's something more. Go on, look further. He goes over to the sink, pouring a glass of milk from a thermos bottle. Anne, pulling out a pasteboard-bound book. A diary. She throws her arms around her father. I've never had a diary, and I've always longed for one. She looked around the room. Pencil. She starts down the stairs. I am going down to the office to get a pencil. Mr. Frank. Anne, no. He goes after her, catching her by the arm and pulling her back. Anne, startled. But there's no one in the building now, Mr. Frank. It doesn't matter. I don't want you ever to go beyond that door. Anne sobered. Never. Not even at nighttime, when everyone is gone? Or on Sundays? Can't I go down to listen to the radio? Mr. Frank, never. I'm sorry, Anarchy. It isn't safe. No, you must never go beyond that door. For the first time, Anne realizes what going into hiding means. Anne, I see. Mr. Frank, it'll be hard, I know, but always remember this, Anarchy. There are no walls, there are no bolts, no locks that anyone can put on your mind. Meep will bring us books. We will read history, poetry, mythology. He gives her the glass of milk. Here's your milk. With his arm around her, they go over to the couch, sitting down side by side. As a matter of fact, between us, Anne, being here has certain advantages for you. For instance, you remember the battle you had with your mother the other day on the subject of overshoes? You said you'd rather die than wear overshoes, but in the end you had to wear them. Well, now, you see, for as long as we are here, you will never have to wear overshoes. Isn't that good? And the coat that you inherited from Margot, you won't have to wear that anymore. And the piano, you won't have to practice on the piano. I tell you, this is going to be a fine life for you. Anne's panic is gone. Peter appears in the doorway of his room. With the saucer in his hand, he is carrying his cat. Peter, I thought I'd better get some water for Mooshie before Mr. Frank. Of course. Now notice here there's a really long section of, right here, this is page 224. So there's a really long section of italicized words here. So this is all stage direction, but I am going to read it. So you would be watching this part. As he starts toward the sink, the carillon begins to chime the hour of 8. He tiptoes to the window at the back and looks down the street below. He turns to Peter, indicating in pantomime that it is too late. Peter starts back for his room. He steps on a creaking board. The three of them are frozen for a minute in fear. As Peter starts away again, Anne tiptoes over to him and pours some of the milk from her glass into the saucer for the cat. Peter squats on the floor, putting the milk before the cat. Mr. Frank gives Anne his fountain pen and then goes into the room at the right. For a second, Anne watches the cat, and then she goes over to the center table and opens her diary. In the room at the right, Mrs. Frank has sat up quickly at the sound of the carillon. Mr. Frank comes in and sits down beside her on the settee, his arm comfortingly around her. Upstairs in the attic room, Mr. and Mrs. Van Daan have hung their clothes in the closet and are now seated at the iron bed. On the iron bed, Mrs. Van Daan leans back exhausted. Mr. Van Daan fans her with a newspaper. Anne starts to write in her diary. The lights dim out. The curtain falls. In the darkness, Anne's voice comes to us again, faintly at first, and then with growing strength. So notice the next section is Anne's voice. And so that indicates that you are hearing what she is actually writing down in her diary. And so the picture kind of helps you to see her doing that. Anne's voice. I expect I should be describing what it feels like to go into hiding, but I really don't know yet myself. I only know it's funny never to be able to go outdoors, never to breathe fresh air, and never to run and shout and jump. It's the silence in the nights that frightens me most. Every time I hear a creak in the house or a step on the street outside, I'm sure they're coming for us. The days aren't so bad. At least we know that Meep and Mr. Kraler are down there below us in the office. Our protectors, we call them. I asked Father what would happen to them if the Nazis found out they were hiding us. Pim said they would suffer the same fate that we would. Imagine. They know this, and yet when they come up here, they're always cheerful and gay, as if there were nothing in the world to bother them. Friday, the 21st of August, 1942. Today I'm going to tell you our general news. Mother is unbearable. She insists on treating me like a baby, which I loathe. Otherwise, things are going better. The weather is... Anne's voice fades out as the scene ends. That's the end of that snippet, I guess you could call it, of the play that we have in our textbook. So there is a full-length play. If you go back to the beginning, this is just kind of a glimpse of it, of the story. I don't see a cover of the book here like we do a lot of times. So you can look it up on our Google Classroom. I'm going to post a couple of links for you to get some more information about Anne Frank. And there's actually a virtual tour of this place, this annex that you see behind her. There's a virtual tour of the actual annex where Anne stayed. So I'll put a link to that on our Google Classroom. That might help you kind of have a little bit better understanding of what it was like there and what she's going through. In addition, I've also linked the workbook page numbers to our classroom so that you can see those and be sure you do the ones that match. I am going to go ahead and read this little Mousetrap play, and so that you can have both of them, because some of the questions are related to both plays. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you too. All right, so it says, now that you've read a serious play, here's something much lighter. A Better Mousetrap presents unusual characters in a ridiculous situation. Get ready to laugh. So the title is A Better Mousetrap by Colleen Newman. Wanted, state-of-the-art pest control for clever rodent. And the characters are mouse, woman, man, four corners, metal, bar, catch one, catch two, wider, longer, higher. The time is now. The setting, there are two chairs on stage, one far left, one up center. I think this would be kind of fun for us to act out in the classroom. Perhaps we'll get that opportunity sometime. At rise, all performers sit in line on the floor upstage, facing audience. Mouse crouches at the end of the line, far right. Woman sits at end of line, far left. Man sits in middle of line, center. All sit and hold same position until they get up to take part in the action. But all but woman and man wear character name signs. Signs are folded and taped up so that the audience can't read them. So if you were in the classroom, this could kind of look like what our actors and costumes would look like. So you all just kind of have some labels on there. Okay. So I'm going to read through this one, so follow with me. Mouse. There was a mouse, untapes and turns down sign showing a mouse to audience, and a woman. Woman stands, comes forward, mouse goes right. Who was afraid of the mouse? Woman, seeing mouse. Eek, eek, a mouse, a mouse. Oh, help, help. Jumps up onto the chair left. Oh, oh, oh. Man, standing and coming over to woman. What's wrong, my dear? Woman, hiding her face in her hands. A mouse. I saw a mouse. Man, crossing center, looking carefully at mouse. So it is. Politely tips hat. Morning to you. Mouse, tipping hat. Morning, sir. Man, you would seem to be a mouse. Mouse, I am indeed. And you are? Man, I am Richard Esquith, Esquire, Senior, the third. I own this house. Mouse, and a charming abode it is. Top of 228. How kind of you to say. The man. Woman, eek, eek. Man, oh, where are my manners? This is Dorothea Esquith, Esquire, Senior, the third, my lovely wife. Woman, crooking finger through clenched teeth. Richard, dear. Man, going back to woman. Yes, dear. Woman, icily, deliberately. You are talking to the mouse. Man, actually, it was worth an introduction. It was more of an introduction than a talk. Woman, shrieking. Kill it. Man, oh, yes, of course, I was getting to that. Let's see, checking pockets, slingshot, hatchet, MTV, rap music. No, I don't seem to have anything lethal on me. Woman, seething. Set a mousetrap. Man, a mousetrap. Hits head with hand. Oops, sorry. Of course, a mousetrap. Obviously, a mousetrap. Checking pockets. I don't seem to have a mousetrap, so I'll have to build one. Mouse, sighing heavily. Here we go. Man, a mousetrap is a rectangle, so I'll need four corners. Corners turn down their signs. Man notices them. Ah, there they are. Come right over here. Yes, that's right. Man puts them in sitting or lying positions where corners of Mousetrap will be, then arranges their arms and legs at right angles to form corners. Here, and here, and here, and here, and a Mousetrap has a metal bar. Metal bar, turn down their signs. Yes, you two will do, right over here. Man moves them to bend at waist and center of trap with outstretched arms touching. Then, as though with great effort, man pushes them into an erect position. And I need a catch. Catch one, catch two, turn over their signs to hold back the bar. Yes, you two, over here, quickly. They run over, reach up, and hold arms of metal bar. Let's go. Whew. And of course, no Mousetrap would be complete without a 1-pound block of the finest cheddar. Takes cheese out of pocket. He's got some interesting things in his pocket. Mouse and trap. Man. Cheese. Sets cheese on floor in the middle of the trap. Ah, there we are, my dear, all done. You may come down now. He's talking to his wife about coming down out of the chair. Not until the woman responds with, not until that disgusting rodent is dead. Man, well, I've built a very fine trap that will no doubt do the job sometime during the night. Woman in relief. I certainly hope so, dear. I'll look forward to it. Man, good night. See you in the morning. Woman, nighty-night. Man stands just right of woman's chair. They both tilt head to one side, rest cheeks on folded hands, close eyes as if asleep. Mouse. That was the first night. Higher, raising arm, clock high above head, giving it a good shake. Ring. Man. Good morning, duck. Woman. Morning, cupcake. Man, offering hand. Let me help you down. Woman. How splendid of you. Sees mouse and screams. Eek, eek. Man. Is it the same disgusting rodent? Woman, covering eyes, pointing at mouse. I can't bear to look. Man, turning toward center. The trap didn't work, I suppose. Mouse and trap, shaking heads in unison. Trap didn't work. Mouse. It isn't that it's not a fine mousetrap. It's a very fine mousetrap. I just find it a bit small for me. Man, of course. Hits forehead with hand. Why didn't I see that? It should be wider. Wider turns over sign, and longer. Longer turns over sign, and higher. Higher turns over sign. Yes, all of you, over here, and here, and here. Wider lies along the end of trap. Longer lies along the front. Higher stands on chair center, and the metal bar should have teeth. Metal bar looks at audience, bears teeth. Ah, much better. Goes back to woman. Woman. Well done, dear. Man, tonight will be the night, my sweet. Never fear. Man and woman. Nighty-night. They assume sleep positions again. Mouse. That was the second night. Higher, raising clock, shaking it. Ring. Man. Morning, Petunia. Woman. Morning, Muffin. Notices mouse and screams. Eek, eek. Man, turning to center stage. So once again, the trap didn't work. Mouse and trap. Trap didn't work. Mouse, matter-of-factly. It's the noise, you know. Man. The noise? But there isn't any noise. It's as silent as a stone here. Mouse, that's the problem. A mouse likes a noisy trap. Man, of course. Hits forehead with hand. Noise. I should have thought of noise to trap. Well, go ahead. Make some noise. Corners. Wubba wubba. Man to audience. Wubba wubba to metal bar. And you, metal bar. Whoosh whoosh. Man to catches. And you, catches. Wibba wibba. Man to wider, longer, higher. And you, wider, longer, higher. Together they say, ugh. Man, worried. Again, points to each of them in turn. Wubba, wubba, whoosh, whoosh, wibba, wibba, ugh. The man says, not bad. Again, he conducts. Performers in trap make their noises with even more rhythm this time, looking pleased with themselves. The trap. Wubba, wubba, whoosh, whoosh, wibba, wibba, ugh. Wubba, wubba, whoosh, whoosh, wibba, wibba, ugh. Wubba, wubba, whoosh, whoosh, wibba, wibba, ugh. Man stops conducting. Trap continues. Noise. To end of play. Though not so loudly that actors have a shout. The man. Very good. Keep it until tomorrow. To woman. Nighty-night, dear. I'm sorry, keep it up until tomorrow. He wants them to continue making the noise so that hopefully the trap will catch the mouse tonight. What do you think? Is it going to work? We'll see. How will we sleep with all this noise? The woman says. Man, probably not very well. Nighty-night. They assume sleep positions again. The mouse. That was the third night. Higher, raising clock, shaking it. Ring. The man. Morning, dumpling. The woman, annoyed. What? Man, louder, I said. Morning, dumpling. The woman screeching as she sees the mouse. Yikes. The man turning center. Don't tell me. Trap didn't work. Mouse and trap. Trap didn't work. Mouse. You see, it doesn't move. And a trap that doesn't move is always such a disappointment. Man, well, you're in luck. Movement happens to be my specialty. Let me see. Goes to each performer in trap and starts a movement. Feet twitch back and forth, head nods, arm goes in circle, etc. While ad-libbing actions must be simple enough for actors to continue through end of play. This arm can do this. This leg can bend back. That's good, etc. Stands next to woman. There we are. Isn't that just perfect? Who could resist a trap like that? Good night, Gumdrop. The woman, wearily. She's wondering, I guess, if this is going to work. Of course, right, whatever. They take sleep position. Mouse, that was the fourth night. Higher, raising clock, shaking it. Ring. Man, good morning, my little peppermint drop. Woman, well, did it work? Man looks center. Mouse waves. Man, trap didn't work. Trap stops noise briefly to speak. Next line with mouse. Mouse and trap. Trap didn't work. Mouse, may I make just one final suggestion? Man, I would most appreciate it. Woman, you're going to listen to that miserable rodent again. Every time you do, things just get worse. Man, the way I see it is, who better to give advice on mousetraps than a mouse? Besides, if I hadn't listened to him so far, I wouldn't have made this lovely trap. To mouse. Now, you were saying? Mouse. Though it is indeed a wonderful mousetrap, a marvelous mousetrap, it would be perfect if it were louder. Man. Louder? Mouse. Louder. And faster. Faster? Much faster. Man. Louder? Turns knob, perhaps the ear or nose of a player on trap, gets louder and faster, pulls a lever, perhaps the arm or leg of another player, and trap starts moving very fast. Actors' lines now have to be bellowed. Nighty-night, sweet pea. The woman, as if anybody could sleep standing on a chair in the middle of all this racket and commotion. They sleep. Woman tosses and turns. Mouse, and this is the fifth night. Trap works frantically for a few more seconds and then collapses into a big heap of bodies. Trap. Boom. Actors lie very still after explosion. They should not land on cheese. That's your directions. If you were in the play, you should not land on the cheese. I guess the cheese needs to be available. Higher. Raising arm out of pile. Shaking clock. Ring. Man. Good morning, lammy cakes. Woman, testily. It is not a good morning. It wasn't a good night, and I'm not your lammy cakes. Thundering. Did it work? Man, looking over and gasping. It collapsed. No more trap. Mouse and trap. No more trap. Man, oh, my beautiful, clever, wonderful trap. Gone. Woman, you fool. 5 days and 5 nights I've stood on this chair. Gets down. I'm hungry and tired and suffering from nervous exhaustion, and all you care about is that ridiculous mousetrap. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to my sister's house to eat and sleep and take a bath. Not necessarily in that order. She stomps off. Man. Oh, well, if she's leaving, to the mouse, I suppose you can stay. Mouse. Why, thank you. Man. And I guess I won't be needing a trap. Mouse. Oh, how kind of you. It was a marvelous mousetrap, though. The best I've ever seen. Picks up cheese. You wouldn't happen to have any crackers, would you? Comes center. Man. Moving center. Why, yes, I believe I do. Takes crackers and plate from pocket, arranges crackers on plate. Mouse. To audience, while taking slice of cheese from package. You see, while they did build a better mousetrap, what they didn't realize is they were dealing with, turns down sign, second sign, a slightly better mouse. Second sign reads, slightly better mouse, who wasn't hungry. Takes crackers, puts cheese on it, until now. Takes bite. Quick curtain. The end. So there's your picture there at the end of the slightly better mouse. And now that the mouse is hungry, the trap might have worked, right? Now there's a section here at the end that you can read. Let's see. I don't think it's necessary. It just gives you some directions. It says production notes, a better mousetrap. So if you were acting this out, it might give you some specific guidelines about how to do that better. And then, so now you're ready to go on to choosing a couple of questions here. If you look at your assignment sheet, it'll tell you exactly how many questions you have to choose from page 236, and then do the workbook pages that go along with both of the plays. If you have questions or if you need help with any of that, send me a message on Google Classroom. Have a great day.